The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I am your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with our reviews of the player cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. This time around, we are going to take a look at the Seeker Customizable cards. We're going to talk about Alchemical Distillation, Empirical Hypothesis, and the Raven Quill. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or cards that are good in one particular deck get a Bless token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the list of taboos or are simply bad for the big game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. You all rock. If you'd like to be amazing like these people and support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty, Nicole Fiscus, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for their contributions to the channel. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, to our reviews of the player cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. We are making our way through the customizable cards for each class. In this video, we're going to take a look at the 3 Seeker customizable cards. Just a quick reminder that we are not really going to be rating these. We will talk about their power levels and whatnot, but due to the customizable nature of these cards and the sheer number of variables involved, we won't be giving them a rating. We are going to start off with Alchemical Distillation. It is a 2-cost asset that has a willpower skill icon, item, and science trait. Customizable, uses 3 supplies. As an action, spend 1 supply, choose an investigator at your location, and test 1 intellect. If you succeed, that investigator performs one of the following options: draw 2 cards or gain 2 resources. Alchemical Distillation takes up a hand slot. Now, Alchemical Distillation has 7 customizable options, ranging from 1 XP all the way up to 5 XP. Mending Distillate adds the option of healing 2 damage, while Calming Distillate adds the option of healing 2 horror. Enlightening Distillate adds the option of placing 1 charge or secret on an asset you control, while Quickening Distillate adds the option of moving up to 2 times. Refined Alchemical Distillation enters play with 2 additional supplies on it. Empowered is 4 XP. When you initiate this skill test, you may increase its difficulty by 2. If you do, increase the value of the effect granted by each option by 1 for this test. So you'd be getting, say, 2 cards or 3 cards or 3 resources. And finally, Perfected for 5 XP. If you succeed by 2 or more, the chosen investigator may perform 2 different options instead of 1. What do you think about this card, Matastrophic?
So I kind of like this thing because I'm always a big fan of Seeker cards that let you help the team. And I like how this thing, just like your favorite card, Medical Techs, it's like you pick an investigator and you make a test, and if you succeed, something good happens. The effects themselves are kind of gentle for an action. I like that they exist. I like how you can add in some healing in there, and it's nice that you can help the team. But I think the real good stuff here is Perfected, where you spend 5 XP and both your copies let you do 2 things, because that's when you get the real action compression. Even if those 2 things are spend an action and a supply to have an investigator draw 2 cards and gain 2 resources. That's 4 actions for the price of 1. I think that's when things get really good. But other than that, it seems okay. It's kind of in the same vein as like the Strange Solution, except there's no offensive option here. It's kind of it seems like the Strange Solutions that no one ever remembers because they're not acidic kicker.
Yeah, Perfected seems really necessary here.
Yeah.
I'm not wowed by the basic only getting one of the things. After you spend 2 resources in a card, it's going to take you a while to actually recoup the action you spent and the card you spent. And I know that drawing 2 cards and getting 2 resources is better than just taking a basic action, but it just doesn't feel like quite enough. It really feels like you need to to have perfected in the mix so that you're getting both for one action.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have a big issue with this one. We've been sort of looking at various decks that these cards would work in, and the one that sort of attracted me was using, I think it was Enlightening Distillate and Perfected in order to play this with Ancient Stone Knowledge of the Elders. So you can...
yeah.
So you can... trigger it to draw 2 cards and place a 1 charge on the Knowledge of Elders. So you get to draw 2 cards, Knowledge of Elders triggers to do 2 damage, and then you drop another charge on the Knowledge of Elders, so you get to extend its lifespan a little bit. But you could certainly do this with all sorts of other very powerful Seeker cards. Pendant of the Queen, Ariadne's Twine, Aeon Chart, Mr. Rook, the Necronomicon, you name it. You can dump charges on those. I guess my only problem with that is if you can afford those cards in your deck already, you're probably winning at Arkham or the LCG, and so
kind of true.
Adding Alchemical Distillation into the mix, I mean, you've already beaten the game at that point, especially if you're playing with the list of taboos and you've picked up some of these cards, or it means you're just going to win more, I guess is the issue.
True. I think the use case I see myself using this for is Carolyn Fern. I've been kind of on a Carolyn Fern kick lately, and I could see doing Perfected, just go full support. You know, I do Perfected and I take Calming Distillate, I think, because Carolyn can get the full 10 XP out of this, you know, because it heals horror. So I can go like, all right, friend, I'll make a test and you get to heal 2 horror and gain a resource and draw 2 cards. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good for an action. That's almost on the level of what was it? The researched asset from Edge of the Earth, the one that where you spend an action and one of your friends draws a card and heals a horror around that level. I'm like, okay, that's not bad. I can see myself doing that. Just kind of as like a support option, you know, where I'm giving other people like cards and resources.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be picking up the healing damage and horror ones if I was just playing it in a regular deck. I do like the placing of a charge, but
yeah,
I think if you're going to go that route, you're really probably committing yourself to playing a high-powered Seeker, because the thing about this is once you sort of, if you're going the Perfected route, you're taking it out of most off-class Seekers almost immediately. True. So then you're really just focused on pure Seekers. Refined is really is nice if you need the extra charges. 3 supplies, obviously 5 supplies is better if you can afford it. Empowered is interesting, but I think Perfected really trumps it in getting to the action compression.
Yeah, get that action compression in there. Yeah.
So a few options with Alchemical Distillation.
It's not too sexy. I do like the support options.
The next card we're going to talk about is Empirical Hypothesis. It is a 2-cost asset with an intellect skill icon, talents and science trait customizable, limit 1 per investigator, forced at the start of the round. Choose one of the following criteria for this round. You fail a test by 2 or more, or you succeed by a test by 3 or more. When the chosen criteria is met, you may exhaust Empirical Hypothesis to add 1 evidence to it. And as a free triggered ability, you can spend 1 evidence to draw 1 card. Now, Empirical Hypothesis has 8 customizations, ranging from level 1 to 4. The first 4 are basically adding different criterias, ranging from you run out of cards in your hand, you are dealt damage or horror, you discard a treachery or enemy from play, or you enter a location with 3 or more shroud. All of those criteria can trigger the draw. Peer review costs 2 XP. The chosen criteria is met if any investigator at your location meets it instead of only you. Other investigators at your location may trigger the free triggered ability on Empirical Hypothesis. So basically, with peer review, you can share the draw with friends at the table. For 2 XP, you can get Research Grant, which Empirical Hypothesis gains a free triggered ability. Spend 2 evidence, reduce the cost of the next card you play by 3. So rather than getting the draw, you can reduce the cost of cards. Irrefutable Proof costs 3 XP, and Empirical Hypothesis gains free triggered abilities. Spend 3 evidence, discover 1 clue at your location. And finally, for 4 XP, you can get Alternative Hypothesis. After you exhaust Empirical Hypothesis, you may resolve its forced effect, choosing a criteria you have not chosen this round, then ready it. So basically getting 2 uses out of Empirical Hypothesis each turn. That's a lot of text for a card that basically lets you draw a card every round. But this is one of the customizable cards that is pretty good, even just if you don't spend any XP on it. It's basically like a Lucky Cigarette Case that doesn't take up an accessory slot, and Lucky Cigarette Case is pretty common in many rogue builds that can use it. The criteria for triggering this thing aren't particularly onerous, especially if you're a high-powered seeker at a low shroud location. I discover a clue, I succeed by 3 or more, I get a card of the deal. And then if you want to pump some XP into this thing, you can change it around a little bit. What do you think about this one?
So, I think I think my main problem with this card, because I find this thing pretty problematic, is the fact that it's a forced trigger at the start of the round. Okay, pop quiz. There is one other player card in all of Arkham Horror that has a trigger window at the start of the round. What is it?
I think it's Mind Wipe.
Not the start of the round. I'll double check Mind Wipe just for you. Mind Wipe is
start of the phase.
That's after a phase begins.
Okay.
There is one other card that has a trigger window at the start of the round, and it is Tides of Fate. And the fact that you're looking it up right now on Arkham DB tells you how often you use Tides of Fate. And even Tides of Fate, you can trigger it during any fast action window. So I think the real problem with Empirical Hypothesis is that you have to remember to use it. Remember to set your criteria, because no other card in the entire game makes you make a decision at the start of the round. So you really got to watch out for that. That being said, you're right. This is basically just another Lucky Cigarette Case or Lucky Rabbit's Foot. In fact, my favorite use case for this is just don't even bother with the upgrades. Just stick this into Jenny Barnes or Daryl, or just Min, or just anybody you can take it. Put a single copy in there. Set your criteria to what your deck is already doing, and then just tell your friends every round I'm just doing succeed by 3, and then you're good. Yeah, the fact that you can draw a card whenever you want, is pretty nice, because you can draw a card whenever you want. One thing I will note about the upgrades, they seem kind of specific, and I wouldn't even bother with them, to be honest, unless you're doing some ridiculous alternative hypothesis where you're trying to trigger multiple criteria in a round. So you could kind of go down the rabbit hole there, and try to do multiple ones. Of the upgrades, though, the one I would actually see myself using is peer review, because I'm a team player, and I like how it's more likely to trigger when anybody at my location can meet the criteria, and then I like how I can give them cards as well. It's worth noting that the hypothesis itself has to exhaust in order to put an evidence on it, which means that research grant and irrefutable proof are not going to come up all that often. Because you either have to exhaust it once a turn to get 1 evidence a turn, and so irrefutable proof, you have to wait 3 turns to discover 1 clue, which is fine, but you could have just played Working a Hunch instead and discovered a clue whenever you wanted. Or you have to do alternative hypothesis chains, and then you're looking at a 10 XP monstrosity, to discover some clues. So I guess this is just a long-winded way of saying is personally, I would just say keep it simple. Just use it like a Lucky Cigarette Case, and tell your friends I'm picking the same criteria every round, because you're gonna forget.
Yeah, that's basically what I was looking at with this one. Peer review was really the only one that stuck out to me as being something I would be willing to purchase, especially in multiplayer, so you can just share the draw around. And if you are unable to use it that round, if you're playing 3-4 player, I'm sure there's somebody who will succeed by 3 on a test somewhere,
or fail something.
Can use it.
Yeah.
But the others, like you said, if you're using research grant or irrefutable proof, you're going to have to be basically saving evidence over the long term. And alternative hypothesis, well, I appreciate, you're trying to maximize the number of times you're getting to trigger empirical hypothesis each turn. It just seemed like this is going to cost a lot of experience points, and because the effect is basically like drawing cards, or then you've got to pick up research grant and irrefutable proof. You
could run out of checkboxes at that point.
Yeah, just the deck sort of that sort of stuck out to me was using peer review and research grant for multiplayer, just to sort of, if they don't need the card draw, they can reduce the cost of a card, which is helpful. Obviously, this one combos with Daryl Simmons, who can use the evidence for other things. And then the deck that actually sort of stuck out to me was, or the deck that I'd be interested in building with this, is some of the rogues who can't play Lucky Cigarette Case because of their build. So I was looking at a deck that was using Trish Scarborough with lockpicks and cards like Crystallizer of Dreams, Precious Memento, or the Red Clock. So because all of those cards take up accessory slots, you can't necessarily easily play Lucky Cigarette Case with them. You can, of course, pick up the that card from the Dunwich Legacy that lets you play an extra accessory slot. But because Trish can take empirical hypothesis, she doesn't necessarily need to do that, and so you get the Lucky Cigarette Case effect and the other effects that you were interested in. So
that's true. You could just slam two of these in there. One thing to also note is that because this is limit one per investigator, it kind of suffers from a problem that a lot of the customizables have, where that if you play or run one copy, you're kind of double charged on XP.
Yeah.
Because
that's a problem.
Yeah. So just long-winded way of saying, like, personally, I'd just say just take it as if it were the base card, and like maybe do peer review, like, because I think that's nice. You can help the team, and it becomes more likely to meet the criteria. Other than that, I just wouldn't bother. Just play Working a Hunch.
The next card is the Raven Quill. It is a 3-cost event with 2 intellect skill icons. Item, relic, and upgrade trait customizable. When you purchase the Raven Quill, name a tome or spell asset and record that name on its upgrade sheet. Attached to a named asset you control as a response when you resign or the game ends, either mark a checkbox on the Raven Quill's upgrade sheet or reduce the experience cost to upgrade the attached asset before the next scenario by 1. So the Raven Quill has 7 customizations. For 1 XP, you can pick up Living Quill, which, using the attached asset's action ability, does not provoke attacks of opportunity. For 1 XP, you can get Spectral Binding. The attached asset does not take up any slots. For 2 XP, you can get Mystic Vein. You get +2 skill value while performing skill test on attached asset. For 2 XP, you can get Endless Inkwell. Name 2 more tome or spell assets that you can attach the Raven Quill to. For 2 XP, there is Energy Sap. The Raven Quill gains as a free triggered ability. Exhausts the Raven Quill to move 1 secret or charge from an asset you control to attached asset. For 3 XP, you can get Interwoven Ink. After you resolve an action ability on attached asset, you may exhaust the Raven Quill to ready another asset you control. And for 4 XP, there is Supernatural Record. When you play the Raven Quill, instead of attaching it to a named asset you control, you may search your deck, discard pile, and hand for a copy of the named asset and play it, paying its cost. Then attach the Raven Quill to it. Now, I have to admit that this card nearly broke me.
Okay, let's hear it.
The sheer number of options, man, oh man, it took me a long time to wrap my head around this card and what it could do. What do you think about this one?
So I started thinking about it, and initially I just went on my normal Seeker outrage path, which I'm sure like half of you have like come just to see me flip out over a Seeker card. But the more I think about it, the less impressed I actually am with it. I got to be honest. Okay, so first of all, it suffers from the problem of you have to draw the asset that you named, the specific asset you named, put it into play before you can use the Raven Quill at all. So it suffers from the problem of you have to draw things in a certain order. Unless you spend 4 XP, then you can get Supernatural Record, which might be kind of neat, but it's nothing special. We already have the level 2 Mystic spell that lets you name a spell and go searching your deck for it. Like
Right.
we already have, yeah, we already have that. There's nothing special here. And then I was like, XP, like, first of all, why? Like, why do you need to just give away XP? But then again, I just thought about it some more and I was like, well, it's just a bad delve too deep at that point. Because you might as well just spend 1 on delve too deep and get an XP for the whole table, rather than go through the rigmarole of having to like name an asset, go find the asset, play the asset, draw the Raven Quill, unique by the way, put the Raven Quill on that named asset, and then wait till the game ends to get 1 XP. It's just like just play Delve Too Deep at that point, if you're one of those XP cheating people. And then I look at this some more and I'm just like, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. I gotta be honest. Like, what does this thing really do? Okay, so you can avoid attacks of opportunity. Like, okay, fine. Like, what? I guess, like, you can avoid attacks of opportunity. Like, have you ever had like a specific tome where you're just like, oh my God, I really wish I could avoid attacks of opportunity while using this tome that like my deck is all centered around? I guess. Like, I guess it's useful, because sometimes you engage with enemies. I don't know. The spectral binding is kind of garbage because, okay, attached asset doesn't take up any slots, but you had to have the slot to play the asset in the first place, and then the Draven Quill frees up the slot. So what you're saying is you have to draw 3 things in the right order. You have to draw the asset, then you have to play it. Then you have to draw the Raven Quill. You have to play that. And then you have to draw the asset you really want to play in that same slot and then play it. So you got to draw 3 things in the correct order in order to like justify using spectral binding. And it's just like garbage when you don't know what's going on. I mean, you got endless inkwell, but it's like, why? Because you can only play 1 Raven Quill anyway. So it's like, why spend 2 XP on just being able to just put it on different assets? It's like, that means your deck's not really focused at that point. You're not it's like you're just wasting XP at that point. So of them all, like the energy sap one actually looks like you can really do something with it, just like as a way to recharge a particular asset. That I can see stuff happening. I mean, if you're doing mystic stuff or even seeker stuff, there's already like other cards that that add a bunch of charges at once. I'm thinking like Truth from Fiction or Winds of Power or what was that skill card we were talking about in the mystic reviews? Oh,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there was that skill card in the Mystic reviews that can like no nonsense just recharge your asset.
Yeah.
Like you
Oh
could
yeah.
already just
Ghastly Possession, was
yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's just like you could just do that anyway and just add charges that way. You don't have to go through all this like rigmarole, you know? And then you've got interwoven ink, which like seems like it could be really crazy. Like you set up your chain and you do crazy stuff, but and it seems like it could be a lot of fun. But then again, like how many like decks have you seen that have used Sign Magic level 3? Which is because that does exactly what Sign Magic level 3 does, where you have an asset, you use it, and then you ready something else and you use that as well, and you get like an action chain out of it. With all the setup, like people don't do that because they like it's almost like they realize it's just too much work. So I guess what it is like my brain initially started broken. I initially wanted to flip the table and be like, God damn it, making another broken ass secret card. But then the more I thought about it, I'm just like, this is just bad Mystic cards, you know, to be honest, all wrapped up into one. It's got good art though. I'll say that.
Yeah, I
It
think
is, yeah,
when I say that this card nearly broke me, it was sort of just the gobbledygook
yeah,
of stuff on
just
the card that I was like really struggling to wrap my head around. Now, after I sat down and sort of looked at it, yeah, I agree with you that a lot of it is, for 1 XP, which you have to spend on the Raven's Quill or upgrade the card that it's attached to. Now, the one
Mhm.
question I had was when you name the asset, I don't think that asset has to be in your deck, does it? Like at the
I
start,
don't
when you're
know.
building your deck, can you just name any card?
Oh,
Like, okay, I'm going to
I
get
guess.
Shriveling, or I'm trying to think of like an XP, a card that costs XP that doesn't have a level 0 version. Like, can I name that card?
Oh, probably.
Like,
I guess.
it doesn't seem like there's anything restricting it. So it just says name a card. Okay, I name a card that isn't in my deck, and then eventually I buy that card so I can use it with Ravenquill. But the one that did stick out to me was Interwoven Ink, because I think that one, of all the upgrades, we don't have that many cards in the game that allow you to ready an asset that is exhausted.
That's true.
And
that's true. Ready an asset that's exhausted, there are not very many. And I can see that working on tomes.
And there are a lot of cards that do exhaust that are quite powerful. I immediately checked to see if you could work this with Duke. Of course you can, but man, oh man, this would be totally busted if you could play it with Ashcan Pete and Duke, because you'd be like, okay, I exhaust Duke, I do a thing with the Raven's Quill, I ready Duke, I get another Duke action every turn. That would be crazy. I have seen, I believe it was Valentine 1313 built a deck using this and double from the rogue card pool to basically double, which is pretty crazy. I think it also included Crystallizer of Dreams, so you could double, then double, use the thing again, stack it on Crystallizer of Dreams, so you could committed to a skill test. That's pretty crazy. The one that I was sort of looking at, this is totally janky and I don't know if I would ever play it, but if you use this with Vincent Lee, Book of Psalms, and Spirit of Humanity, you could add 6 bless tokens to a bag for 1 action, which doesn't seem bad.
Hey.
So you basically you put the Quill on the Book of Psalms, so you trigger Spirit of Humanity to add 2 bless tokens to the bag. Then you use the Book of Psalms, which heals the horror you just took.
Right.
Adds 2 more bless tokens to the bag, and then readies the Spirit of Humanity, which then you trigger again to add 2 more bless tokens. You could add Knowledge's Power to that mix, so then you can trigger the Book of Psalms without taking an action. Yeah. And then if you really want to get janky, you could add, say, Brand of Cthulhu and Earthly Serenity to the mix, and pick up what was the card? What's the one that lets you add the 2? Endless Inkwell. I think if you get Interwoven Ink and Endless Inkwell, it still comes in under Vincent's XP cap. So then you could basically trigger it off of either Brand of Cthulhu or Earthly Serenity as well, which would be, I think you basically add 2 bless tokens with Spirit of Humanity, heal the horror and damage you took with Earthly Serenity, and then get to do it again. I mean, it's totally janky and probably, but I mean, if you built a support build that was like, okay, I'm just going to heal everybody and stuff the bag with tokens.
Oh, yeah.
That might not be bad.
Because,
The other one that sort of I thought about was, remember when we talked about Enchanted Bow back in Edge of the Earth, and one of the problems with Enchanted Bow is that it has to exhaust to trigger it.
Right.
This gives you a way of refreshing the bow. Now you'd have to probably play it with somebody like Luke Robinson, who has access to Seeker cards, so you play it with Luke. Give him some other, attach the Quill to, say, like a Brand of Cthulhu, so he shoots something with the bow, it doesn't die, he triggers Brand of Cthulhu to attack the thing again, ready the bow so he can attack again, sort of thing. So yeah, it's really janky. I don't know if it's even worth the effort, but that's the sort of thing that this card enables. And of all the sort of cards, I feel like this is the one that somebody might end up breaking, simply because there'll be some effect that if you can ready it twice a turn, it could get kind of out of control. But
well, exhaust is there so you only use it once a turn. But
the Ravenquill does exhaust, so you can't loop it infinitely. But
well, someone will figure out a way to do it. It'll probably involve, like, you return it, you like discard the asset, because it's an Eon Shard or something, and then you like draw through your whole deck again, and then you play it again, and then because that's Arkham for you. Someone will figure it out.
So yeah, Raven's Quill is there's a lot going on. I'm not entirely sure if it does a great deal of anything, doing a lot of stuff to sort of drawing a bunch of cards in a particular order to sort of save an XP seems like a lot of work when cards like Delve Too Deep exist and you can just give everybody an XP. But it does enable some interesting builds. So there you go. Took me a long time to figure out the various decks simply because you need sort of just the right investigator, right, who can take. There are quite a few. I was actually surprised though, there are a lot of cards that, or assets that have like that exhaust clause on them that might be,
for good reason,
might be interesting if you can unexhaust them to use them twice a turn.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, we already had Sign Magic level 3. I didn't, for getting extra actions and stuff, and I just never saw that got any good use. So it seems like one of those things where like it like in your brain it seems interesting, but then you go to do it and you're just like, well, whatever. Like just do what you want to do, with cards that exist and without all the rigmarole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for our look at the Seeker customizable cards in the box. Let us know in the comments down below what you think about these ones. Have you had a chance to play around with the Raven's Quill? What are some of the interesting interactions you've come up with? Let us know. Any final thoughts, Matastrophic, on the Seeker customizables?
I felt initially reactionary when reading these because, you got to have your guard. You got to have like, your guard up when you're looking at Seeker cards, because then, your brain's immediately going to figure out how to break them. But the more I think about these, the more I'm like, eh. That being said, I do appreciate the alchemical concoction, how it can help out multiplayer. I like it. I like that. I can see myself actually using that. I like the art too. It looks pretty good. I like all the blues and stuff, and how it contrasts with the yellow of the border. And I'm like, oh, this looks nice. Alchemical concoction feels like it feels like a more support seeker, and I like support seekers. I have a feeling I might pick it up for Carolyn Fern, to be honest, because I'm kind of on a Carolyn Fern kick right now. But yeah, support seekers seems good. Complex, take a lot of steps seekers to draw lots of cards. I'm like, yeah, whatever, don't bother.
Yeah, I think Alchemical Distillation and Empirical Hypothesis are probably the easiest cards to slot in. Raven's Quill seems like it requires a little more thought, and I don't know if I necessarily want to sit down and commit the time necessary to figure out that sort of interaction. I'm not, as a solo player, I'm not really a big fan of combo decks, simply because they usually just take too much time in solo to get the combo together, and by the time you do, you could have just spent all that time just winning the game anyway. So
exactly,
you're really only pulling off the combo just for, I don't know, bonus points at that point. I'd just rather beat the game.
1 XP. It gets you 1 XP. Remember that? Beat
the game and move on. But I mean, Empirical Hypothesis is I mean, you don't even really have to spend any XP on it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. It just works.
Right out of the box. And Alchemical Distillation, I think you sort of need perfection to get enough value out of it. But again, what's that?
I agree.
5 XP for 2 copies is, it's not bad.
Too bad. If you look at it at 2.5 XP per copy, it's not bad. Like I was saying, I kind of like where the Carolyn Fern aspect, where I can go 6 XP, get 2 copies, spend an action, heal somebody for 2 horror, have them draw 2 cards, or gain 2 resources, and then give them another resource from Carolyn. I'm like, that's good. That's like 5 actions of effort, for 1. I'm like, yeah, I can see myself playing that.
I think one of the issues that we do run into here, much like some of the other cards we've seen, is that unless you're playing 2 copies, you're really going to be overpaying XP.
Yes.
And in the case of Empirical Hypothesis and the Raven Quill, you're really only going to have 1 copy on the table at any time, and so you're really paying a lot of XP for those abilities. So that's something to keep
at least
in
the
mind.
Hypothesis works. You can just slot 2 copies of it for 0 XP, and 2 times 0 is 0, so you don't get double charged.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.